be surprised at what the books are.
Yeah.
I think that's the interesting bit. They'd be like, oh yes, did she write a storybook? It's like not exactly. Like it's more like a book that allows people to tell their own stories through rolling dice, and they'd be like, oh, he's a real big nerd, isn't he? Oh no. Good art or art that has kind of meaning, that's kind of made by people, demands some element of your presence. Like, kind of, what would you sacrifice to be there? Like, are you going to stand 10 hours in line so you can go see the Mona Lisa?
Mm-hmm.
Or, go into the Sistine Chapel? So I think you should leave all that in.
I think so too, 100%.
Yeah.
Like, the bit that I just did was a banana, and Curtis and me at the end being like,
yeah.
we're children at heart. Anyway, hello. Today, everyone, I'm here with Charlie Menzies.
Hello.
And we're going to be doing our lovely interview number 4 already. Hopefully all going well. We have these lovely little chinchilla-looking microphones today, so we should be sounding a lot better than we have for the previous ones. But for anybody who is here for number 4, thanks for being here. I cannot wait to hear all about this. It's something very different today, and I'll let Charlie tell you all about it. But for now, let's start with what I normally end with, which is, where can people find you if they want to hear more about you beyond this?
Absolutely. So you can find us at www.parablegames.co.uk, at Games Parable on X, Twitter, whatever the hell it is now.
I don't know. I don't have it anymore.
If you search Parable Games on Instagram and Facebook, you can find us on there. You can find us under Shiver RPG as well, because we have multiple pages for different products, which I'll get into in a minute. But yeah, Parable Games is the main thing to search, and you'll find us.
And they're really easy to find, because I tagged them in something the other day and realised I wasn't following them, so then I followed them. I don't know if you saw that. Okay, let's get cracking. Just let me find the questions, which are hopefully in your brain by now, but they won't be in mine, because I can't remember anything. Right, question number 1. Let's start with number 1, shall we? What is your favourite project ever, and why? So that can be project, a game you created, just in general, even if something else comes up in your brain that's not even to do with this.
So it's a tough one to answer, and I wonder if you feel similarly like this as a creative. It's like picking between your kids.
I don't have any, so I don't know.
Well, you know what I mean. Just I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's right. He does have one child, but it's got 4 legs and.
We have a dog called Bear. But who is number 1? He would get picked over everything. But yeah, no. In terms of like picking between projects, each one has something very different to it that scratches a different part of my brain. But if I had to pick one, I'd say it'd have to be Shiver, because it was the project for me that kind of changed the course of my creative journey entirely into a completely different field, different career, different life. So it would be that one. It is my baby still. Like, it is very much the one that is kind of like, it was the first kind of main one, and has spiraled off into so many other things. So yeah, I'd have to say Shiver.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Excellent choice as well, because I can actually say I have played Shiver how many times now? 2? Ooh. We're in the middle of the second campaign?
I think 3.
3.
I think. Oh wait, no, because
we did the dinosaur one.
Dinosaurs.
And now we are doing the.
Did you not do the submarine one with us?
No, I think.
No. That was it. It was Amy and Megan. Yes. Anyway, but yes. So yeah, 2 times, but multiple sessions of each, isn't it? That's always the weird bit I have to get around in my brain of being like, is it sessions? Is it stories? Kind of like how many times?
I know, because this one's going on for like 3 sessions now. How I would describe it before you do is a much more accessible way of playing like a D&D, what are they called when it's a shorter version, a short campaign. It is so much fun, and like it's not so much about the numbers and things like that. It's all about the story, and the dice are so much easier to use, and things seem to move a little faster, and it's a little bit more creative. Even though D&D can be really fun, it can also be quite overwhelming, because I've played D&D and found it that way.
For any non-nerds out there watching this, D&D is Dungeons and Dragons, a very famous fantasy role-playing game, and that is what I'm in the business of making, is role-playing games. I have also done this in the past, where I start talking and realise, oh wait, not everyone is coming at this from an angle of knowing role-playing games, but I think by the themes of it, through playing Shiver, I mean, you played some Dungeons and Dragons already, kind of with your dad. Like, it does feel like you and so friends have very much fallen quite heavily into the hobby, which is really lovely to see. But it's a really common thing that it's a bit of as a hobby, it's a bit of a creative gateway drug to gaming in general, I would say, especially for anyone with a theatre kid bent. It is absolute.
You got me.
Yeah.
I got him. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for turning into what I needed to say, which was, yes, D&D stands for Dungeons and Dragons, which is a tabletop game. I just got so into talking about it, didn't even realise that I was using the lingo. So yeah, that is what Shiver is in essence, and it's your baby and your creation, and it's incredible. So give us a kind of overview of Shiver in general, apart from like that's what it is, but like what kind of things does it cover? Because I know you've got like 9, 10, how many?
It would be when the more recent book gets finished and published, it'll be 10, I think, roughly. But yeah, so Shiver is a horror role-playing game. So really kind of what the game is this. It is a book. It is a book that gives you rules in order to play a game on the tabletop with your friends, where one player takes on the role of the director. In Dungeons and Dragons, it would be the Dungeon Master, for example, but it's someone who's running the game and telling the story. Your players are playing in that story and inhabiting characters, making decisions, and when they make decisions, and especially try and do tough things, they have to roll dice to determine what happens. So for Shiver, this took my love of horror movies, and I kind of thought, what if I tried recreating that feeling of inviting your friends over for a horror movie night, and you're all kind of settling around with the popcorn, but you play in the movie, because I'm a massive horror fan, and I get really sick of people who are a bit down on the genre going, oh yeah, I'd survive that. Yeah, no, they make really dumb decisions. And it's the thing, as soon as you put players at the table, as I think you've probably experienced, you put a little tiny bit of pressure on them, the terrible decisions come out of the woodwork. They're everywhere. And it's a really fascinating thing to gamify and play around with. And kind of on the flip side of that, I also wanted to make a role-playing game that was more accessible as well, because I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and that's what I was kind of doing before, as well as called Cthulhu and some of the other like kind of various like big ones. And a lot of my players really struggled with numerical dice. So we kind of went down a different route with it to make using symbol dice. The rules are very kind of light and easy to kind of get into, but there's a lot of depth to how you can kind of play.
That is definitely how I describe it as well, because just because it's light, it doesn't mean that it's not got that depth, and it doesn't mean that it's not gripping and like exciting. Like there's still so much to it, but it's so much easier to play because you're not bogged down in a lot of the weight of, I should be better with words, but not bogged down by the weight of all of these rules and like, I don't know.
Well, I think really kind of what you're doing there, and actually you're kind of almost figuring and calculating and trying to figure out, it's like, okay, how do I explain like the mathsy element of the pluses and minuses of D&D to an audience? Ultimately, that's the problem. So when you're at a table, so the whole point of Shiver is basically you're playing a horror movie with your friends. That's the whole point. And in a horror movie, if the characters suddenly pause and be like, right, I'm going to swing my axe on, I'm going to hit the zombie in the head, and hopefully I'll kill it, otherwise it might eat me. Right, okay, so now I just need to get out this table. I need to +2 here. There's a minus thing, and do the cross division here. And all of a sudden, the tension is gone. It's evaporated.
Where I'm back in like year 10 maths having a terrible time.
Exactly. And I think for a lot of my friends, that's where they were going. And then, and that's kind of how this started, was basically a homebrew system that I played with a bunch of my old screenwriting friends from my course, and like kind of in the industry when I was still living down in London, and just did it as a way like, we don't have that much time, we're quite busy, they're bouncing off of this rule set, I'm enjoying it, let's make something that's really, really fun. And basically we played that for a year before I even showed it to anyone else. Like in a group,
That's amazing.
Yeah. So Shiver was just like a thing that I did with friends as just like a fun creative thing. I never really considered it anything until like a very key point, and then that's what it kind of evolved into something else from there. Yeah.
Amazing. I think that'll probably fit into one of the other questions. So this might build on that. What's the biggest challenge you faced in that project? So when you were creating Shiver, because we all talked about how good it is and this and that, what's the biggest challenge you faced?
Oh Christ, there's so many. It's so, for a bit of context, I think before designing this game, I was in the film and TV industry. That's where I kind of started, where my love of like horror and stories and kind of like cinematic storytelling like generally came from. And I always thought like that's kind of where I was going to be going. So it was really interesting moving into an entirely new sphere, and basically having to tussle with serious imposter syndrome because I kind of had a very sudden sharp route into the industry and was suddenly like there and doing shows, and like the book was published, it was out and like being sold. I was like, oh, and then it was all just quite a lot. And I had that kind of feeling because it's when something like that happens so fast, and you've completely pivoted from another creative field, and suddenly that is kind of gaining traction when there have been people there who've been, working in that industry for like kind of 10 years. And it was a very strange thing for me to pass that, like, I was here, I was doing well, like people were enjoying what I was making, even though fundamentally it was the first thing I'd ever made that was a game. And I think that was a big one, especially with the Shiver core rule set. Was like I'd never done anything like that before, and it was kind of a bit of a Hail Mary kick. We'll probably get into kind of a bit later with the actual history of it, but kind of like tussling with, am I actually a professional? Do I belong to be in this space? Do I belong to be? Does my stuff belong in stores? Like kind of like people are paying this something I've made on the regular and playing it, and it is this kind of interesting thing of like being very proud of the thing that you've made, but it kind of being, because it's the first one, it kind of feeling like it's got to be a fluke. Like it's like something's not quite right, and that has faded. It's always still there, like a little bit. And I think the other thing as well I will say about the role playing industry in general is it's generally an older space, like in terms of like kind of more. I mean, like D&D was like late 70s, 80s. Like it's so you have much older, longer established companies and products as well, and product lines. I mean, like D&D, obviously, like kind of being one of those, but like Call of Cthulhu, which is probably one of our biggest competitors, and a game that I absolutely love from Chaosium, is very much kind of in that. And it was like kind of like entering in where you've got these basic games that are
straight in with the big dogs, basically.
And these games are like, this is like first edition of a thing I've never made before, and then you're going up against something like Call of Cthulhu, which is on its 9th edition. Like
who's on then 8th, 9th edition now though?
Well, we're still first edition, but I'm with you. But and I think it's a really important thing to talk about, because I think a lot of creatives don't. That like you always have that little voice inside your head. Oh, I don't know, maybe it's just me.
Definitely not. It's not.
Of that, like even the world and the people and the product itself is saying, is like, this is good, everything is fine. If you don't feel like internally like you've proved yourself enough in that arena, there will be that anxiety, that doubt, that's there, that kind of hand wringing that can kind of happen. But and as it turns out, the way to get past that was just to keep publishing more books, which is what we did. So it's definitely faded, but there's always like where you try something new. So for example, actually I've got it down here. So like I branched into solo role playing games with Don't Play This Game. Like started designing it a couple of years ago, and that kind of got released. And that's been really well received. It was a very tough book to write, but in terms of that, it definitely awoke some of those things of being like, although it's a role playing game, it's in a very, very different sphere of role playing games. It's designed for a singular person to play and be a very personal experience, which is a very different design ethos. So yeah, and again, with lots of people proven in that space. So yeah, imposter syndrome. That's what I would say.
Side question.
Okay, yeah.
/ statement. I bet the first time you held one of these in your hand was insane. when it's being published?
I teared up. Like it's so like as a kid, and it's interesting because it's something that faded away a little bit more of that. I always had a dream of being like, one day I'll have a book published, like a hardcover book. It'll be mine, it'll be something I've written, and it'll be done. And that kind of like faded away a bit when I kind of went more into film. It's been like, oh, I'm going to be like directing a film when I'm 30, like kind of like energy kind of went more that way. When it turns out that actually Kids Charlie was more realistic.
He knew what
he knew what was up. He knew what was where I should have been going. But yeah, no, it was very emotional when they arrived. And then I think there was another layer of that where there's one thing where you've like printed something and made it, you're holding the finished item, and that feels really, really good. It's a whole different thing where you go into a shop where you would go and buy other things that you normally go like, so like Travelling Man, for example, in the UK, I would go to get like graphic novels and things like that, and going to Travelling Man for the first time and seeing it on the shelf, like in a display, was I couldn't quite put it together. And it was really lovely of seeing a load of my friends who were some big nose as well around the UK, just being like, oh, Shiver spot, and they'd show me where it was popping up as we went more and more into distribution. So yeah, I'd say like that was that 2-tier thing of like getting the physical thing is always really magical, like the first time round, and it is with every project that we do. But seeing it in shops, it's definitely threefold. It's you get the physical thing yourself, it's seeing in shops, but the real magic is where you go into a shop and you see your stuff being played. Or you go to a convention and you see it being played.
Oh my god!
Especially when it's being played, it's not being run by you for a change, because then it validates that element of being like,
oh, it is like someone else can do it.
Well, especially the fact that I've run it for a year just for my mates. It gets out of that thing of like, I'm just making more friends and just running this for more people and spreading it like in a really slow grassroots way. But it's kind of when you go to conventions and be like, oh no, there's like free sliver shots on the docket, and
idea of somebody is saying your name outside of a room that you're not in.
Exactly.
But they're playing your game outside of a room that you're not in, and it's going well.
Yeah, it's mad. Like it's crazy. Like it's a very strange feeling. And I say a recent one with this one, because it's over the past year or so, is translations. That's another one. Is seeing proofs and books of something you've written in a completely other language and being played by people in other countries. Even a language that's not your own is wild.
That's incredible. I love that. Thanks for that. Put that extra question in there.
That's all right.
Okay, so to pivot a little bit, I like this question because I think everyone has those hard days. But how do you push? There's two questions, and there's a knowing when to stop one's coming next. But the first one is, how do you push through on a hard day when everything's sort of stacked against you, but you need to push through? How do you push through? What do you do?
Oh, it's a mixture of things. I'd say I'm very much if I'm feeling overwhelmed with a lot of stuff going on, which quite often there is with projects that we're doing, I'm a big fan of lists. I'm a huge fan of lists. So I'm breaking things up day by day. So then I can kind of, because I think if you're feeling overwhelmed on that day, it's not just about what's there on that day. It's about what's all around it.
I get that.
So tell me what I tend to do is be like, okay, if today's feeling overwhelming, the rest of the week is probably feeling just as bad if I don't get a handle on it. So if I don't have a handle on it already, I'll sit down, I'll make lists of like everything that I need to do, actually think about prioritization. Now that we've grown a little bit, I actually start thinking about delegation, something I never used to do. And now I'm kind of getting a lot more used to it, being like, okay, that is actually work I can let go. I don't need to be martyr about it. I can spread the work out. And then just kind of making those lists individually for each day of like kind of what I feel needs to be done. And then I do the reality pass, as I kind of call it, where I'd be like, actually, what can I physically get done in a day? Because I am terrible for it. I will overestimate all the time, and then will be disappointed when I don't hit all the targets.
But when someone says, "Oh, Charlie, what have you done today?" and you list all of these things, they go, "Wow!" and you're like, "But I'm not done.
I'm not done, and it's not exactly what I wanted to do. That was on my list.
Not done."
And there is the sharper edge of lists as well. Of like, if you don't balance them correctly, is that actually it's just slightly too high, uneven, wobbling towers of stuff. So you have to kind of make those things of like split those towers up as much as you can and recognize when one is still wobbly, and then take stuff out of that and give it to somebody else, put it into next week, move a deadline, have those more difficult conversations that do make you feel uncomfortable but need to happen.
Yeah.
If you, especially if you're working in a team, if you're working in a solo regard, cut yourself some slack. Like just give yourself a break. If you're working for a client, have a chat with the client.
Yeah.
I used to do client work all the time. Quite often with some clients, especially the bigger ones, they ask for too much in too short of a time frame. So it's kind of catching it early on, great, but obviously making those assessments and having those discussions, I think, is super important. But yeah, you just have to be in tune with what your capacity is and how you manage that capacity. And that can be lists, it can be kind of like calendars, it can be kind of however you want to kind of break stuff up. And also the other thing of how I get through on a hard day is that when I break up little tasks, when I complete a task, I give myself some form of a treat, because ultimately I am a small Labrador, like at heart. Like, but the weird thing is that, like, I think when people think of being like that kind of idea of like treat culture, it's not what everybody thinks. It's not like, you know, I'm coming down like having a pastry or a thing of chocolate like every 20 minutes when I do like one tiny thing. It's more like sometimes it can be like, I'll come downstairs and I'll make a cup of tea, which needs to do anyway because I need to stay hydrated. Or it's like, I'll just pop outside for 10 minutes and go for a short walk around the block. Treat.
Yeah.
Like some would say life maintenance and healthy things that you should be doing anyway. I say treat.
If you restructure them as treat in your brain, that's like a double whammy.
Exactly. So you get a dopamine hit for being a treat, and then you're actually just doing something you should be doing anyway. So yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. I think that is a really healthy way to kind of balance yourself when you get. How can I kind of put this? Because this is something very specific for me, when you get hyper focused in on something, and everything else fades away, of like, to remember that you're still a being that has physical needs.
Correct.
Yes, who should eat, have a shower, go for a walk, see the sun, like
before it goes down.
Before it goes down, which in winter is the worst. So I think it is remembering all of those things. So yeah.
I definitely know that one, because now it's getting darker as well. My desk faces a wall, so sometimes I turn around and I'm like, oh my god, I need to go outside now.
Yeah.
You're gonna miss it.
So lists and treats, brackets, taking care of yourself but disguising it as dopamine hits.
I love that.
Yeah.
Perfect. So how do you know when you've hit the point where you're like, I need to take a break? And I mean, like, you can take that however you will, but I think I'm meaning more of like a, whoa there, Hossy, I need a break for either an hour or a week. How do you know? What's the signs for you?
It can vary in the different parts of work that I'm doing. When it's like editing and layout work, it's when I feel a mounting frustration and like on teaching on the edge of anger at something.
Good spot.
If I feel angry at the work itself, then that's a sign I need to just take a step back, because I'm just too irritated, like, and usually it's because Adobe's crashed, or like, you know, something's not working the way it should do. Or in some cases, you know, there's like a load of mistakes or something that I haven't, something unseats you, and that frustration can build. And the thing that you don't want to do is basically find yourself at war with your own creation, because it's not healthy. So usually at those points, I try and walk away and have, even if it's just 10 minutes, come back at it and just be like, right, this is what we're going to get done for the rest of the day, and then I'm going to shut up.
I think it was beautiful.
Thank you.
At war with your own creation. Oh, you wordsmith, you.
And segue is nice onto writing. Writing's a bit different. So writing, I rarely get frustrated or angry at, because it's the part I probably enjoy the most. With writing, it's more like so it's not writer's block in the way that I think people think writer's block is. So this is another pet peeve of mine, I think, in terms of how people actually perceive like what writer's block is. So I think for some people, when they think writer's block is, it's like, I can't write a single word. Like, you know, every single source of words has been blocked up and I can't put anything to paper. Writer's block is actually different. Writer's block is like, you've put stuff down onto page and you're like, no, that shit, delete it. You just write again, it's be like, no, not quite right, and you get stuck in like an edit loop on like a sentence, and at that point it's like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Or like the other type that I tend to have sometimes when there's a lot going on, or I'm stressed, or I'm overtired, is the ideas are there. They're in my head. I can see them, but getting them from here onto a page in written form is like pushing treacle through a millimeter width pipe. Like it is awful. It is there is a mental pain to kind of trying to push through that, and sometimes with that is I set myself a very small goal of like, if that is getting really painful, then I go down to like, I'm going to get 500 words done.
Yeah.
And actually just, because sometimes my method, and I think some people will disagree with me on this, is that like I set a small achievable target, I push through, I get those words out in any shape that I can.
Yeah.
Have a break, come back here and be like, oh, Jesus Christ, that's not exactly what I mean. Okay. And then rewrite it, like fundamentally. But you need to, for me anyway, I shouldn't say you need to, like someone's different in that process, but like I feel I need to push through and get a certain amount of what's in my brain out, because there is a similarity with the way I like to kind of think about the brain is like, it's if you've ever seen like overhead maps of LA and the absolute rat's nest of roads that it is. So the way that I kind of think about my brain is like that. It's endless amounts of roads with lots of little cars rushing around all the time, and they're all different ideas. And the thing is that you kind of need to be your own traffic controller, because if all lanes of traffic are open, it's chaos. It's too noisy. Your mind gets polluted. It gets jammed up. Like it's because thick ideas can collide. And I'm not talking about like just ideas in terms of like, like, oh yeah, I've got such a setting and then a character and then this. It can be that, but it's also like, if you're thinking about, I need to prepare for a convention, I need to email this person, I need to do this, I need to do that. It kind of, that is all lanes of traffic open. So for me, it's one of the things that I do, and I've now implemented for some people on my team, because I think they think very similarly to me, is I establish what I call focus days. So it's where I kind of set like, okay, the way I'm going to do it is, or focus weeks, I'm going to be working predominantly on this. I will do small admin tasks and have like admin hours on set days. And then just I say to the rest of the team, this is how I'm working at the moment. If something is on fire, call me. That's fine. Like if it's a genuine measure we're really struggling with doing, that's okay. But generally, don't be like, it is the bane, I think, of any creative is the can you just request. Like, can you just do this?
I can, but at what cost?
Yeah, can you just do this? And it's going to take an hour and a half of your time. And so the way we talk about it in the team, because my business partner's my brother, and we have our other director, Matt, who's joined us. And I had a big chat with them actually about, because I kind of managed a creative team. And I think this is a general thing as well, is it's about gear shifting of that. For me, like if I can spend a whole day writing, I know I'll get a good amount done. If I only have 3 hours to write and then I need to gear shift into layout for 2 hours and then deliver something, then gear shift into emails, and then the expectation is that I need to gear shift back into writing to then finish up what I had, that last gear shift is going to be like, and that's where we're back to. We've gear shifted, we've merged into lanes, all of the traffic, so another traffic's coming in, another traffic's coming in, another traffic's coming in. But we're not saying no more writing space. We're shutting off that lane of traffic.
It's rush hour.
It's rush hour, and that's when you get jammed up, and that's where things get too noisy. It gets too polluted, and then ultimately nothing gets done because you get gridlock, and that's what happens.
Incredible metaphors. I am a sucker, like an absolute sucker for a visual metaphor for something. A wordsmith. Right. Number 5. What made you say yes? Or what made you say no that made you say yes? Because you talked about going from film into making games. It might not be a singular thing, but what is it that made you say, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
It's a mixture of things. I'd say I'd be very remiss to not mention, I should say, my brother, Barney, of that. Shiver, I was playing, with my friends and stuff. And and my brother, for context, so he kind of lives up around where I now live, kind of around like Nottinghamshire. And then he owns a friendly local gaming store, so doing like Warhammer, trading card games, that kind of thing. So
what's it called? I'll link it.
Seventh City Collectibles in San Diego.
Cool.
But yeah, he's been from university. He kind of discovered his love of games like massively, and has kind of been in that world like on the business side for a really long time, from like a very early age as well. And I was kind of like and played role playing games and stuff as well. So when I made Shiver, I had it all in this like sprawling notebook with sketches and various things. So I like had all the old sketches of the symbols for the dice and things like that.
Cool.
And I kind of brought it up, and it came for Christmas basically. And I kind of said, like, "Oh, you like games?" It's like, I actually made a game. It's like, it's just been like, if you maybe like to play it like sometime, and showed him it. And he kind of sat down, and we had like I seem to remember Barney having like a whiskey, or was having a whiskey after thing. Because this was like, we're in like our early 20s at this point, like, like,
that's what you do.
20s.
I think you're cool.
And
now we're drinking decaf coffee.
Fish, yeah, and trying desperately to make sure we can fall asleep later. But yeah, no, and he read through it, and he kind of, we were in for like 30 minutes, and kind of sat there, and I remember him, he closed the book, and he looked up at me, and he said, "When do you want to make it?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, so I didn't say yes initially, but he kind of was like, "Well, it's like you've designed it, you're playing with your friends, and it's ultimately, to be frank, it's something I sell RPGs in my shop, and it's something I've not seen before, and I think it is a gap that you've filled because you filled it by making something that you want to play and you love. So this seems like it could be really fun. I can help. Do you want to give it a whirl?" So I just went, yeah. So then Barney got more involved, and he used to be like a competitive like Magic the Gathering player, like and like obviously knows all of these rule systems. So when it came to like rules writing, I could get a semblance down of kind of what I wanted and get it quite far. But then Barney was then there as kind of like a major editing force on the initial kind of pass of turning it into a proper rule book, where it'd be like, okay, so we need to talk about keywords, for example. So when we talk about something mechanical that happens repetitively throughout the game, it needs a capitalized word that repeats itself throughout the book. That's in the glossary. That's here, and it was like, okay, like, yeah, because in trading card games, that's a huge thing of like you know what charge means. You know what I'm trying to remember Magic the Gathering terms now, and I can't because I
can only think of like Baldur's Gate ones now.
Yeah, but it's like knowing those stasis effects, knowing those things of like because ultimately what you are doing, and this is where the kind of slightly the bit that surprises me in terms of how my brain works and actually adapting to this quite well, I feel, is it's a programmatic language. It's kind of what you're doing, but you're trying to make a programmatic language palatable to people in a book format. Because ultimately, like in a video game, you can pull back that programmatic language really, really far by reducing it down to a simple series of inputs and decision points. There we go.
So if anyone's noticed, not that if you're listening to it as a podcast, you won't know, but if you are watching it on YouTube, you will now see that the quality of the camera has gone up because I have gone and borrowed Dale's phone because I filled mine with videos of random other art things. So what we're going to do is sleep. We're going to slip seamlessly back into that. Wrap up talking about the language of, I forgot what we were calling it.
So like with the language of like games like this, it was we're talking about like programmatic language, which is kind of like rules language, and how like in video games, for example, a lot of your stuff with role playing games, that stuff's hidden and is reduced down into basic inputs, and your game engine itself is doing all the calculations. In the case of this, like your GM becomes that. Your whoever is running the game kind of has that element, but the players do too. Like you kind of form a game engine together in terms of how you interact with it, but then you have the base language that you're all speaking through it is that programmatic language. It's
really nice to see someone do a dice roll and you're not going, what does that mean? Like this dice rolls and you see the colours or you see the symbols and everyone reacts after a while, and you don't always get that with different role-playing games, but with this one in particular, you see that and you're like, oh my god, 3 keys, too strange. It's great, and it's got its own language. And I love that.
It was a big thing with with symbols and colour. There's a reason. So in the rule book, I call it rolling the knuckle bones, because that's what I wanted to happen, of being, to feel like that mad stoop crone in a cave throwing crab bones down and being
bad marriage.
It's bad marriage, yes. It is horror. It's and doing that, and I think it's always more interesting when other people can read, understand, and interact with other people's dice rolls.
Yeah.
And that is basically it's like what we were talking about, like with tension. Like when people are doing maths, tension is dead.
Yeah.
When people are looking at a dice pool, realizing the consequence of that
straight away,
the tension's maintained, and if not ramped up, because the consequence is immediate. And in Shiver, there's elements mechanically that impact the story. So in terms of, for me, that's where the special source of design is for me in game design, is where you're taking stuff that is more on the mechanical side and like having it interact with story and player narrative. So probably the best example in like Shiver is the Doom clock. So like in Shiver, basically you've got like a fistful of dice. The better you are at something, the more dice you roll. And all the dice have different symbols on them. One of them is a purple eye with the Shiver S on. It's called the strange symbol. So unless you're actively looking for that dice, if you roll and you fail, you count up the number of strange that's in that pool and you add it to the Doom clock, which is a 60-minute clock, where at 15-minute markers, bad stuff happens.
You say that in game as well. You'd be like, bad stuff is going to happen, and we're like, oh no.
And I think, to quote Harriet and being like, what's going to happen? It's like, I'm not going to tell you, because that's not how horror movies work. It's like, the whole point is, the whole thing that maintains the tension is that you don't know. You just know at these markers that are ultimately met by and sown by your own actions and failures, that it's going to be a direct result of that. And I think that is the big thing where it's with any RPG or kind of game, the thing you're looking at is, if we're going to go more in the code programmatic language, it's very you're looking for input and output, or the way it is player decision should always lead to consequence, and it is always more satisfying when it is narrative consequence that keeps the momentum of the story moving forward in an interesting way. The last thing you want to have is, you rolled a 10. What does a 10 mean? I don't understand. I'm going to do some maths now. 10 is actually, well, it's not great, but it's not bad. You don't succeed. What do you want to do next? It literally takes and I think that's where a lot of people bounce off of D&D. And don't get me wrong, like, there is a reason D&D has been the market leader for like a long time.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
It
is fantastic. It allows you to do so much. I personally feel like on a book level, it struggles on the role play side of it, and it is very much a very comprehensive combat simulator, like in a lot of ways, and has a lot of other interesting stuff that's in there, and a lot of meat for people to sink their teeth into, and is extremely modular. And I think that is the thing that a lot of people on the game off side really, really enjoy, because they can hack it to pieces and do what they like with it. Some points to absolute death. I'm in a group called I'm Begging You to Play Another RPG. But that's a big side quest that I'm not going to right now, because of the amount of jokes that people make about being like, but couldn't you just do that in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons? It's like, and to quote Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, it's like, you could, and you thought so long about the fact that you could, that you didn't actually think about whether you should, and maybe you should try an indie game or another game and play something different, people. Come on.
Did you plan to say this?
No, that's how I feel about it. Like, good God, like it's a constant battle for other designers of being like, D&D is there in space. D&D is where it is in space for a reason. The way that players respond to it, react to it, and develop very strange loyalties to certain elements can sometimes be very baffling, very frustrating. But it is ultimately something that we kind of like have to deal with as designers, because and I think it's really interesting if we're working in a creative space, is that you don't have in a lot of creative spaces this very large totem pole near monopoly force that's kind of in the middle of it, as a semi-genesis point as well. I've tangented hard there.
No, I love it. Tangent too close to the sun, my friend.
But to wind it back, the issue that you run into with basically player input leading to consequence that has narrative momentum and drive to it is just that. Is that it's twofold with D&D. It's what does a 10 mean? Like literally numbers, unless it's a 1 or a 20, it means nothing to people. No, like honestly, because that's how people think. It's like, oh, I felt really, really badly. Oh, I did really, really good. And people's brains are very binary when it comes to that element. Because numbers, I think, don't, especially because it is a data set from like 1 to 20 is actually, in terms of role playing terms, is pretty large. Like it's that graduate thing is, it's like if I got 10 or an 11, like what's the difference between 10 and 11? Like you start to get into those steppings of like, how do you make a judgment? And generally it's like, unless it is like a very specified rule, generally it is up to the GM to just decide.
Yeah.
Which is totally fine, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in many, many ways. But numbers don't speak to people. Numbers don't tell.
Unless maybe you've been playing it for a very long time and you can automatically recognise that. But I think with this game, as somebody myself with ADHD, playing this game is everything that I hoped D&D would be straight away. Like not to be like, but it's like you're in it, you play. When you roll the dice, you haven't had to do a massive amount of legwork. And everyone's involved in those dice rolls as well. We're all watching like this. And you do get that a bit with D&D. It's a lot harder for me personally, to concentrate when there's a lot of in and out. Whereas with Shiver, it's we're doing it, it's moving.
Yeah. So the difference is that I think you are right. You're catching me quite well. They're like, it's unfair to say that numbers don't tell stories, because they really do. But the problem is that in order to be able to have numbers tell a story to you, you need to understand what the numbers mean in the context of that game.
Yeah.
And the numbers in the context of that game can change vastly, character to character, and what's on their sheet and what pluses and bonuses they have. That isn't active and present information for everybody, because you can't be looking at 6 character sheets all at once. As a player, in particular, as a GM, you have to. As a player, you kind of don't have that really. In Shiver, the whole kind of reason behind the symbolic dice, and that everything kind of has its element of meaning. It represents an aspect of your character. Also has just like a certain vibe to an action. It's like, do you do something with force? Do you do something with kind of? Do you do something that's a bit sly and cunning? Like, do you do something with like charisma, and you like really kind of throw your back into it, like in terms of performance? And it means that the other dice can, if you have success, the other dice can color it and kind of give you role playing like hints and help of like how you succeed. It colors failures really, really nicely as well. Of that, you do something very different and it ends up going in a completely different direction. Now, as we were talking about, like with the Doom clock, if you roll a strange trick an event, you feel the consequences of your actions in the narrative very sharply. So I'll use an example. For example, oh, God, I'm getting tired now.
Drink
the tea coffee. So say we are in a 1980s summer camp, and there's a slasher abroad chasing you down, running after you with a machete, and you want to kick down a door into a cabin and try and hide inside. So say you're running towards it, and you roll your dice and you try and kind of kick it down. You fail, you roll a bunch of strange, it triggers a doom event. I could say you kick the door open, a splinter goes into your leg, and you stumble back, and you're now moving really, really slowly. And as the door slowly swings open, the slasher is magically on the other side. Because if you lose sight of them, they are wont to teleport. And we literally put a rule in Shiver for that, of when you lose sight of a slasher, they can magically teleport to another area where you can't see them and then appear again.
Oh God!
For the more supernatural ones that are in there. And so that's like an example of like how that works kind of in a Doom clock scenario. So say we shift the system over to D&D. So quite often when it comes to doors, a lot of people's first thought in D&D is, I want to lock pick them, and usually you're in a group. In D&D, you're encouraged not to split up, because of the way the balancing works. In Shiver, it's Blood Pool time. It's a horror movie. I want you to die. No, don't tell the group I said that.
Just gonna tell them.
Yeah, we literally had someone's character just die.
He did jump out the window from like 2 stories up.
God.
I think Harriet wanted him to die.
I think she did. Yeah. Harriet was the person controlling the character, just to be clear. So yeah, and this is a really common phenomenon that you get in D&D, and I think it's a lot of GMs. If your GMs are out there and you're listening, I think you will recognise this scenario. Encounter heavy door. Player wants to lockpick door. They're not probably the best at lockpicking. They roll their dice, they fail. They don't actively see anything else around that's going to cause a problem. They keep rolling. Someone else turns up being like, oh, maybe I'll roll and see if we can get through. And eventually, the scene that you get, when you actually imagine it and put it in your head of like what the players are actually doing, and this is where the disconnect in terms of narrative happens, and the kind of the cinematic element that you're maybe trying to create at your table, is ultimately you've got 5 fantasy characters around a door, fiddling with a lock for 20 minutes, basically brute forcing it through the programmatic language of chance, of lobbing a d20 again until somebody gets a 20. It does happen. Or it doesn't happen maybe to that extreme extent, but it does happen that way. And that was one of the big design things in my brain of being like, I, as a GM, hate that when it happens, because it's like, for me, running games is like, I want things to feel immersive and cinematic. I want people to feel like they're in a movie. And I know some people will be like, they may disagree kind of with that as like an experience, but for Shiver in particular, I want people to feel like they're in a horror movie. And to get away from that, the dice need to have sharper consequence and more clear consequence, and also more information for you and the player to pivot in a different direction. So, like, if you roll a strange, you trigger Doom event. Bad shit can happen to you. If you roll a load of dice, you can succeed in a totally spectacular way that then helps you discover another thing and moves the story forward even faster. Or you can fail forwards in an interesting way. So the common one I use at conventions to explain the dice system is you try and kick the door down, you roll a load of smarts, you kick the door, you stub your toe and you take 1 damage. You have a consequence there. However, as you stumble back, you notice that one of the floorboards is sitting a little bit more strangely compared to the others. You pull it up and you discover there's a key hidden under there. So you use your brain. And that's something we encourage for both sides of the table to do. So it's like that's something a GM can do. That's something a player can do. I often use it with younger players. So like we run games, from people like 12 up usually, and some of these kids have never played role playing games before, and it's a lot of okay, so like you rolled a load of smart. So like, can you think of like a brainy way that your character would get past this door? And tell me what it is. And then they'll tell me, and I'll be like, that's what happens. That's sick. That's really cool. And they're like, awesome. Yeah, I added to the story because it's not about, for me, role playing is not about putting forward a puzzle a puzzle or a situation that your players are going to have statistically overcome. It's about them being involved in a narrative that they can help shape. And ultimately feel the consequences of their actions within that narrative and be involved with it as well. And I think that is it is a very different way to lead design. And I think a lot more games are now moving in that direction, especially because of the representation of role-playing games in the media, and people like yourself being like, this is what I think D&D is, or like kind of like what a role-playing game is from when you've watched like the kids in Stranger Things playing in a basement, Critical Role running their campaigns, the numerous like actual play podcasts that are kind of out there, and it's not to say that those aren't role-playing, but it's ultimately they are facets of role-playing that are refined to be entertainment.
That's it, they're refined. That's nice.
They're refined to a point that they are entertainment and not actually they don't represent the full spectrum of what a role-playing game is like at your actual table. They don't have the moment where you pause for 10 minutes to find an obscure rule in the book because one of the players has built a really weird character.
Don't get me wrong, that can be fun as well. But I think this just is wonderful in its own right. Can I ask you number 6, which is we sort of touched on it right at the start. But what do you think little Charlie would say about what you've created and the job you do now? What do you think he'd say?
I think he'd be be amazed. I think he'd be very happy.
Yeah.
Which makes me very happy that that's kind of been achieved. And I think, it's an interesting one because I think it's kind of what I think I said earlier of being like, oh yeah, like kind of when I was really young, being like the whole joke was just, I could make a book, that'd be really cool, and like that was always like a bit of a dream, and that kind of got in the paths of like moving into adulthood and the world of work, that kind of got lost, and now it's kind of circled back around to it. And I'm happy again. So
good. I'm so glad.
So I think they'd be very happy. I think they'd be surprised at what the books are.
Yeah.
I think that's the interesting bit. They'd be like, oh yes, did you write a storybook? It's like not exactly. Like it's more like a book that allows people to tell their own stories through rolling dice. So they'd be like, oh, he's a real big nerd, isn't he? Oh no, not like this. But no, I generally think he'd be.
But then he'd watch
happy.
you playing it around the table with all your friends.
He'd get it, yeah.
Your dog and your girlfriend, and everything will be all right.
Yeah.
Okay, you're a cool nerd.
Yeah, he'd fundamentally understand it's basically what me and my brother were probably trying to do when playing with Lego together, like with characters and moving them around and trying to make little games out of it, to which Barney would make the rules. I would never understand them fully, and Barney would always win.
Wow, it's always something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love that. What do you wish more people knew about? Because I'm sure there are people out there, well, of course, obviously, who want to make their games and do this sort of thing. What do you wish they could know more about the process, or people who haven't got a clue? Like, what's the thing you'd like them to know?
I think for me, it's kind of the view that if you're wanting to get into RPGs and making books and stuff like this, that it's not as simple as sitting down and just writing an adventure and putting it out there. That's like your first step, is what I would say. If you're wanting to get to published book territory, or even like published adventure territory, or like working for an RPG company, I think the thing I'd like people to know most is that they need to be prepared to wear multiple hats and not be afraid of stepping into areas that they don't know, that they're uncomfortable in, and try something that's a bit different. So like for me, for example, like I just wanted to write, really. Like I kind of was very interested in that. Like there was a time where I was going to illustrate Shiver, and then we swerved away from that because we realised that was insanity. It's too much work.
Oh my god! As an artist, hearing that and you trying to do it, I'll be like, crazy.
And then we discovered Ben, who's one of our original playtesters, who's now the lead artist for Shiver, and is amazing. But yeah, it's trying your hand at certain things and filling that gap, even if it's something that is not necessarily your strength, you enjoy it. So for me, I do all of the layout in design and all of our negotiations and stuff with like our print houses. So like I determine like kind of like the print finishes, like how the books look, all the technical aspects of that, like making sure they print correctly. And I'm not gonna lie, when it comes to technical print stuff, it's dull as dishwater. I hate it. Like it is not good. It's not fun. Like it's really not fun. But I think the thing is that I'd like people to know more about the process. I think this goes broader than just RPGs. That ultimately, to make something you love come to life, you're going to have to do things that you don't enjoy, don't necessarily feel that good at. But in order for the thing to exist, no one is going to do it for you. Like no one is going to do it for you, especially if you're working solo or in a small team. Like sometimes you just have to like suck that egg and just do it and try it. I mean, I was working on the first Shiver book and then the Gothic books when I was still working at the university. I was like doing it in my spare time, and I taught myself InDesign. In that time, I went on graphic design courses. I had chats with people like in the graphic design department, like luckily about like certain issues I was having. Very sneakily,
good place to be.
Like lent on some of my co-workers a little bit when I was still working there, like to kind of just learn a little bit more. And that's just the kind of thing that you need to do, and try and find the fun, the passion in it where you can, because otherwise you find yourself capped out at certain points of like, if you're really good at writing an adventure, then unless you're willing to pay someone to lay it out and artwork it, then really it's going to be like a really good game that you can run at conventions and you run it like at at like shows and like friendly local gaming stores. But if you can't lay it out into a PDF that's deliverable on Drive-Thru RPG, you're not even going to be able to sell it digitally.
Yeah.
Because no one is going to pay money for an ugly plain text document. Or like, I mean, like, you know, when you know you can go on and get a really good adventure laid out, you know, it's like 15 pages for a £5. Like it's in terms of like kind of knowing that market and knowing where your weaknesses are and what outlay you're willing to put out into the world in order to make your thing come to life, whether that's learning it yourself or actually supporting another creative by paying them to do it. Don't fucking use AI and rely on that. I'm gonna throw that out here now.
The creative people are here. We do charge money, but that's because it's our job and we like to eat food and keep a roof over our head.
Yeah, and we'll get the number of fingers right. It's like, come on, everyone.
I might not, because I will forget to count. No, I'm kidding.
But yeah, no. In all seriousness, our frustration with AI. It's interesting. Just as a note, for people who don't know, is that like the role playing sphere fascinating is extremely anti AI on the creative side, like fiercely.
Good.
So like we're working, I can't say who yet, but working to go onto a virtual tabletop platform that wholly just won't interact with AI content in any way. Nice. If anything, they discover you're using it, they'll ban you. Like it's just like there are spaces out there. There is hope. Like don't worry. Like yeah, it's but it is something to kind of challenge. But I think it is also if you are a creative who is hitting a certain wall in your own process, I would implore you plan, either learn the skill yourself and upskill yourself and put the time into developing yourself, or you know, save up the money like you were saving up to buy like a new games console or something like that and invest in another creative to help you bring that to life.
Yeah.
And it will be a lot more satisfying than going down the dark art route.
The dark arts, that makes it sound cool.
Oh no.
The crap arts route.
Well, let's just call it. It's like the lazy tech bro route. Like, I think that's the issue. Is that I was watching into Guillermo del Toro recently. I think he summarized it really nicely when it comes to the creative process. And this comes into what I think I'd love people to know about the creative process, especially with the spectre of AI hanging over all of us. Is that art has a human cost to it to exist. And I think the thing is when you look at the stuff that AI is making off of the backs and the training of people who have put that effort in, it's very, very sad. But I think like kind of when you actually look at the stuff that AI is making compared to what people are making, you know, people who are paid fair wage to actually make and create and put out into the world, is how much time do you spend when you come across this AI slot? Like you literally just skim past it. When you actually interact with real art made by people with passion and kind of an actual story to tell, you spend time with it. And I think Guillermo del Toro put it best, is kind of good art, I'm going to be paraphrasing him a bit here, is basically like kind of good art or art that has kind of meaning, that's kind of made by people, demands some element of your presence. Like kind of what would you sacrifice to be there? Like, are you going to stand 10 hours in line so you can go see the Mona Lisa, or you know, go into the Sistine Chapel, or you know, book early so you can go see that film and support it in the cinema, like I did with Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. It's great. It's a great film. I'm very obsessed with it at the moment. It's yeah. I think we sacrifice our time, our money, our focus for art that means something to us. And the thing that AI generated stuff currently is lacking is that, because ultimately it's throwaway, it's very immaterial, it's kind of there and exists for a second and we scroll past it, whilst really we should be investing in artists who will make stuff that will become somebody's favorite game that they play every week, or their favorite movie that they watch every year at a certain time of year because it reminds them of somebody they love. Like that's the kind of thing that we should be putting investment into. rather than stuff that actively destroys that pathway and that kind of content for people to actually enjoy and engage with.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you.
Last question. Is there a moment, and there doesn't have to be, that changed everything?
Oh, so I think I've already talked about Barney and kind of Christmas. I think that is a moment that
was him
changed
going,
everything.
Do you want to, when are you making this? That moment.
Yeah. That was kind of like the validity stamp of being like,
oh,
you're what?
Oh, this could be a thing.
Exactly, like of just being like, no, like this is actually something. This isn't just a fun throwaway creation that you've made that's only could be joy for a small group of people. Barney's put it quite well of that. One of the best things about our jobs is that ultimately we are merchants of joy. We are merchants of fun, of people of sitting down, getting together around a table in person.
Tell me you have a name tag that just says Charlie Menzies, merchant of fun.
But I think that one's cute, but we've already kind of talked about it. I think for me, if it was kind of a more personal moment that changed everything, is that once the dust had settled with the initial release and Shiver, so we went to UK Games Expo, we won the People's Choice Award for Best New RPG for the core rulebook, and it was the first thing I've ever made in the sphere. And after that, I kind of accepted that was real, because that took a while. Imposter syndrome, as we already previously discussed.
Holding the award like, I don't think this is real.
Was a general review of kind of what I actually wanted to achieve creatively with my life. Because I think the issues I think I probably alluded to it earlier, of being like, I want to direct a film by the time I'm 30. Like, I had very specific goals of being like, really wanted to like kind of make a film and kind of get it out there and see it on the cinema screen. But then there was also all these time elements of being like, it needs to be by here because otherwise like life passes me by, and all of this. And all of these kind of very goals, basically a really big list that was wavering and teetering, all teetering list. And then actually, what it actually took is, rather than actually splitting that list, is that what it needed is the whole tower just needs to be kicked down. And Shiver kind of did that because it realised, it opened up a door in my brain of what my creativity should be and what it should be about. Because for me, I always thought, I'm trained in film and TV. I know how to make films. Like, this is what I should be doing. I should want to direct films. I want to direct films like this. And then as you see how the towers grow, like really, really quickly. With Shiver, what it really was, because I just kind of did this as a bit of fun to kind of express myself and do something different and find an avenue to kind of talk to people and tell stories and get people engaged with something I loved, like kind of with horror as a genre as well as games. And it's the kind of thing, there was a bit of a lightning bolt moment with it, of that the thing that's important to me creating it doesn't matter what the medium is. I may move on from games in the future. I may make things in other mediums. And it's the medium itself actually isn't the thing that's important. The thing that's important for me is that I'm always telling stories and encouraging other people to do so. And that was the turning point.
You've got me.
Yeah.
I think as long as the roots are good, what you grow is good.
Yeah.
And that if your roots are in your storytelling, and even further down, enjoy.
Yeah.
Like whatever you grow from that, whether it's games or films or whatever comes in the future, it's going to be good, right?
Exactly. It's I think it's really important just not to get fixated on the medium. I think that's, and a lot of people do it, and I taught film and stuff for a while too. And you kind of saw it happening all the time. It needs to be this specific thing in this very way. And it's kind of like, when you actually like draw it all kind of back, it's kind of like, why you have to ask yourself the question of like, why you actually wanting to create? What is the drive? Like what is the thing that you're trying to do through creating? And for a lot of us, it's expressing ourselves and communicating something. And for me, like kind of storytelling is something I feel very, very passionate about. So in terms of like, it's kind of, you kind of almost have to find that, my old screenwriting tutor, Simon Vanderboard, like put it really nicely. Like when you kind of, he was talking about writing, I think I didn't really understand the context as I do now at the time. Because like with any, if there's any story that you're telling, child, there's any screenplay that you're writing, the whole thing is you have to find is like, what is that nugget of gold within that story. Like, what is it you're trying to say with something? And I think that's what's important. It's kind of like what you're trying to say, what you're trying to do. Are you trying to tell a story? Are you trying to inspire? Are you trying to raise awareness? Things are way more broad brush when it comes to creativity than just like I'm an RPG designer, I only make games. I'm a painter, I only do oil canvases.
Yeah.
Like that's not what it's about. And
that's not what people are coming to the shop and looking through the shelves for the next game of yours is. Yeah. It's not what they're looking for.
Exactly. But I think it's very, in a world that's so commercial, it's something where we fall down that hole as creatives really, really quickly. Our audiences hilariously don't. Like in terms of viewing our own stuff, they don't see it that way at all. And sometimes it's one of the things I like about going to conventions is that sometimes meeting people who are fans of Shiver, who are playing games, kind of snaps you back to reality a bit for a bit about like why you're doing the thing that you're doing. And I think that's really important.
What a fantastic interview. Thank you so much. I'd like my mics to work and then I'm going to harass Charlie and he will do my interview, and he said yes. Thank you.
My pleasure.
There's been some wonderful nuggets in this interview. I cannot wait to watch it back, and I'm going to enjoy looking through all of it. So one more time, Shiver, Parable, where can we find you? I'm going to put it all in the links and stuff below here. If you've got all the way through and enjoyed with us, let us know. Thank you, Charlie.
My pleasure. Cheers. Thank you.
Nice. Now we're going to turn it off and we're going to go and harass Bear.
Yeah.
The dog. That was fab. Thank you.
Thank you.